Fair in the heart of the Neshoba County Fair here, Mississippi's giant house party. The governor has just completed what I believe may be the final speech of the day. But right now, we're going to visit with the Speaker of the House of the great state of Mississippi, Speaker Jason White. Always good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Gerard. Good to be with you.
So I caught a little bit of your speech this morning. What's your key message today?
Well, we talked about a lot of things. We mostly tried to lighten the mood a little bit. It seemed like everything had been
a lot of
intense talk, especially yesterday and maybe even today a little bit before we got up there. So we tried to lighten the mood a little bit, told a few political jokes. But we did talk about some things that we were able, in our first session to kind of advance policy a little bit, specifically our funding formula. And we talked about where we want to go with that next year as we start looking at real meaningful school choice. And while it may take some baby steps to get everybody on board, Rome wasn't built in a day, and we're willing to start, but we're ready to start. We're tired of talking about it, and we're not going to do something just to check a box. We want real meaningful choice there. And so, we're meeting all summer and fall. We'll have public policy summits. We'll have, Republican caucus retreats and that kind of stuff where we'll really kind of drill down on, get some real direction. We got some smart folks in our education committee and chairing and vice chairing that. And, they have the trust of our caucus and even our body to a large extent. And so I'm looking forward to their work there. And a young man on my staff, he just walked up there, Cole Butler. Yeah. He kind of runs point on education matters in our office, and he does a fine job. And I would point out he's actually homeschooled.
Okay. So he understands the concept of choosing the setting that feel like it makes the most sense.
And then graduated with honors from college and has received a full scholarship offer to law school.
So you mean that does work? Boy. That does work.
It actually works.
Yeah,
he's walking proof. And it wasn't lost on me that he helped craft this new funding formula we have, and he was a homeschool student. So anyway, I thought that was pretty unique. Most folks, they might not let him touch it had they known that. But we also talked about tax reform, real meaningful tax reform, specifically, not just talking high level 30,000 foot, but we're talking about cutting our grocery tax in half, get it to 3.5%. We may have to change the diversion to keep our cities whole. That gets tricky because then the number really starts running up. But we've got room. We've run surpluses of over $1 billion multiple years. It's time to have real conversations about a real tax cut and move away from personal income tax and join some of our other southern sister states who are killing it in so many other areas. And I know we don't have everything that Florida has or that Tennessee has, but we have a lot of things that they do have, and we can also, the governor says this often, and he's right. We're punching above our weight in so many other areas. This would be one more thing you could take off the table. If we could cut this burdensome high grocery tax, one of the highest in the country, if not the highest, and get rid of this income tax, we become a real player in the certainly not only in the South but in the nation.
You made the mention that sure, we may not have some of the amenities and the gifts that Florida has. All the more reason why we need to be pursuing things 100%. Like this so we can differentiate.
Look, it's not a you look around, we do it in everything else. Business does it every day. You copy what other successful people do. It's not, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. and where we can copy them, we want to. We want to be like them. I also think that we're such a small state that we have an ability to bob and weave a little bit where others don't. We're a right-to-work state, low regulation, low burden, low cost of living. We got jobs looking for people, not people looking for jobs right now. We've got a lot of really positive momentum. You hear a lot of politicians say that, but we actually, look, when my House members go to conferences this time of year with other states and they're all around, we're flying our Mississippi flag high and our chest poked out a little bit. Folks are actually coming to see us and saying, tell us about that new formula. Tell us about third grade reading gate. Tell us how y'all cut the tax to get to 4% flat tax. How'd y'all do that? How'd y'all make it work? So and folks hadn't always sought us out, Gerard, when we're at these multi-state conferences.
Well, that's a good place to be in, and we want to continue to be the leader and set the tempo there and be the model, really, for how a state should operate. I couldn't be more optimistic about our future, honestly.
We're the same way. I'm always accused of being the guy with the glass half full, but I really do feel that. I may have said that before and didn't fully mean it. I mean it now. We do have some momentum, and it just feels positive in that way.
I totally agree. So one of the things that I think is no secret to you that frustrates a lot of the average Mississippians is the fact that we see good policy, and it may come out of one chamber or another, but we can't seem to get it through both. Now, I completely understand that that's the way the sausage is made, as it's said, but some of these things, such as school choice, at least expanding school choice options, feels like we ought to be able to do a little bit better on that.
Well, here's what I'll say about that. I knew this to some extent before I was elected speaker, but certainly after I was elected speaker, I got some, as my daddy says, a bought lesson is best, and I got some bought lessons in. It's easy to play defense around the Capitol.
Yeah.
It's easy. You can stop just about anything you want to if you're in the office where I am, and same thing in the Lieutenant Governor's office, and same thing in the Governor's office.
Yep.
2 beats 1 out of those 3 I just named almost every time. So here's the good thing. The governor has expressed some real support for school choice.
Yep.
And we're going to count on that support. And he's not one to back up, so I don't anticipate that. I'm just saying, counting on that support and my members finally being willing to have conversations and look at real legislation. But here's the crazy thing, and you know, maybe on some issues, whether you talk about PERS or health care, my people have been accused of, oh, y'all are just down there doing stuff. Those things come from them hearing from voters.
Sure.
Now, you may say they're hearing from the wrong voters. I don't know. But most of my guys that are in my office every day, all day, were elected in Republican primaries. And they're hearing from their people. They want their taxes cut. They want more school choice, especially as our older generation sees our grandkids, and they see we're not isolated like we used to be. You see what's going on around the nation, and some of this probably for them is preventive. You know, we've always heard the old generation say, "Boy, the times are bad.
Yeah.
This is the end of it."
Yeah.
But it does seem, and I talked about that in my speech a little bit today, this presidential election, it does seem like, for whatever reason, the stakes have never been higher. Like this isn't 2 centrist candidates where whoever
nuanced differences. These are big, broad, radical differences.
These are radical as far away as you can get, and so that nobody can be confused when they go in the ballot box. And so much of what we do here in Mississippi going forward is going to depend on what happens in November. I mean, I believe that. I'm not a gloom and doom guy. I'm just saying we'll have to figure it out depending on what happens in November.
Well, and the federal government has become so overreaching, so overarching. Honestly, and Mr. Speaker, we citizens of Mississippi have to rely on you guys, our lawmakers, to protect us from that as much as you can.
And I think it's become heightened. Like the voters now aren't willing for me to just say, look, you need to call your congressman or you need to call your U.S. senator. They're like, no, what are you going to do about it? Because I'm looking for y'all to be the last line of defense. And, hey, they're right.
Yeah, they're right.
Unfortunately, that's the world we live in. And that's not throwing shade at our current representation.
Sure.
I'm just saying it is the nature of Washington, D.C. And you know, I'm going to do my very best to not let our state legislature get to that place where nothing happens. We seem to be, you know, everything's controlled by special interest and moves at a snail's pace. We want to go a different route and have meaningful conversations that lead to actual policy enactment that people feel and understand and know.
Some of these things that did make it across the finish line, I presume we're going to bring those up again. Let's mobile sports betting is one we hadn't talked about. The ballot measure process that's had some
I've got to add, both of those things passed in the House with overwhelming votes.
Right.
And you will see those probably fly early in the session. Again, my people really hadn't backed up, and they're still hearing from their voters about it.
Yeah.
Our people say something was taken away from them. They want it restored.
Yeah.
They want the mobile sports betting. We have other types of gambling in the state. They don't see the distinction there. And by the way, I would like to capture that and move it towards dedicated streams of revenue for our infrastructure. So we see that as another way, without raising anybody's taxes, of another stream of revenue that goes to something that most everybody agrees is a core function of government, and they don't mind you spending money on roads and bridges.
Well, because right now we're blessed in that we're generating these surpluses, but we're just writing checks essentially over to the Department of Transportation, which we're not supposed to be doing. I mean, it's supposed to be funded separately, special fund.
That's right.
But if we only limited to that, no telling what our roads and bridges would look like.
And we would not have had capacity projects for the last 3 years. All of those have come from one-time money, so to speak.
Yeah.
Now it was money we had in the bank. We didn't go borrow it,
Yeah,
so that's
right.
a good thing.
Right, because of the surpluses.
Yeah, because of those surpluses. But as we look at tax structure, and all of that's going to figure in our tax reform committees in dedicated streams of revenue for infrastructure, for roads and bridges.
Yeah.
But getting away from the tax on work and productivity. I just think I think it's where our people in this state want to go.
Let's do it. Mr. Speaker, always good talking to you, sir. Appreciate you coming
Great to be with you.
Yeah,
Thank y'all for being here at the fair. We've enjoyed it.
You got it. Always a pleasure. Folks, we're stepping aside for a break. We're at the Neshoba County Fair.